I stayed at the foundry he said was cooling. The alert blinked on our shared calendar at 8:59 a.m. Bronze night 6:00:10:30 wax chase plus shell coat plus pour. I stared long enough to hear the phantom cough of the burner, and then the event vanished as if the day had coughed and pretended it hadn't promised anything. 2 minutes later, a text from Owen. Kiln controllers throwing errors. Foundries cooling. I'll come home early. Do you want tacos? Read, I thumbed, yes. Set the phone face down on the museum lighting plot I kept threatening to finish, and tried not to rehearse the phrase heat the metal, not your fear in my mouth. We've been together 7 years. Owen rotates through careful trades the way other people rotate playlists. A winter of letterpress, a spring convincing bicycle wheels to be true, a summer of violins misbehaving less, and since last year, bronze. He comes home with ceramic slurry dried to freckles on his forearms, smelling faintly of wax, investment, and the kind of heat that knows the difference between punishment and permission. He says sentences I keep in my pocket because they apply in rooms that have no furnaces. Don't punish a seam for telling you the truth. The sprue is a confession. Pour like you'll have to live with it. We had a plan that involved no one being brave. Tacos, the dumb travel show we refused to abandon bed. At 5:12 p.m., the foundry posted a story. The controller behaving, the burnout kiln counting down white numbers, shell-coated wax trees like patient planets, and a person I recognized by posture and gray at the temples even in silhouette, Marco tying a paper tag onto a tree as if he were nomming a star. Overlay text, controller OK, poor night is on, bring patient heat. If they're on, we could swing by and say hi, I tried, ringing my voice through a sieve that pretended not to be a request. For me it's off, Owen said, not unkind, cutting cilantro with the seriousness he uses when he's choosing not to argue with himself. I don't have good hands tonight. Which might have been about bronze or about us. Got it, I told the cutting board. The part of me that calls itself prudence tied its boots wrong on purpose. At 6:06 I was in the lot by the scrap bin composing the sort of administrative lie that only comforts the sender. Freight landed early. Running to sign at the museum, I typed. He sent a thumbs up. Reasonable emoji deserve better men. Inside, the air had the breath of rooms that have convinced sand to remember. The wax room smelled like crayons and ambition. The shell room wore its slurry like a dare that turned out to be homework. In the yard, a line of molds sat like planets waiting for weather. 2 taped signs by the sink read "Don't punish wax for telling the truth" and "Slurry is a lullaby, not a sermon." Owen arrived at 6:22 with his tote, the line WANTS air, and he wasn't alone. He walked with Marco in that way people walk with someone who knows where the step is, the practiced half-body of space that isn't flirting until it matters whether it is. He saw me and did that 2-heartbeat step back, his sabirolo of hesitation, then set a smile between us like a coaster. I nodded as if coasters were a craft. Tonight is ordinary, said Anya, the coordinator, clapping once. Wax chase for anything you can still live with, last shell dips for the laggards, then preheat, bury, and pour. Rules, heat the metal, not your fear. The sprue is a confession. Investment is trust you make by hand. And if you need to gossip, not near the crucible. If you need to sneeze, not near the sand. The room's laugh sounded like relief that someone else had reintroduced gravity. I followed Owen with my eyes. He held a wax model in the light, found the seam like a sentence that needed to be shorter, and chased it with a warm tool until the surface remembered it had always been one thought. Marco passed him a brass tool and then stepped back and then did nothing, because sometimes the best help is leaving a gesture alone. Jealousy rose like a badly trained dog I keep meaning to adopt out. I gave it a job. I cut sprues for a teenager who hated asking for help. I whisked slurry when the mixer sighed like an old hymn. I wrote hello on a paper tag because someone had to name something. Shell dip, Anya called, and the room found its bucket. We dipped the wax in slurry, rolled it in sand that remembered beaches it would never see again, and hung it to dry from a wire like a patient Sunday. Not too thick, Anya said. We're not frosting a denial. At the break, paper cups of water that had accepted their fate, a tub of pretzels that tasted exactly like continuing. Owen drifted toward me. You came, he said, no blade in it. I heard observation is already half alignment, I said, borrowing from another craft. Also, you lied. Your hands look fine. Controller ditched its tantrum, he said, his mouth trying and failing to be casual. And I wanted to be the version of me who learns without writing you a report. Also, he looked at Marco and back. Sometimes it's not the worst thing to let someone else correct my heat. He has certain hands. It's always the smallest phrases that live forever. I unfolded the passport truth I'd brought for this exact border. I was afraid you'd get used to a good job that wasn't mine. Owen set his palm on the work table the way he sometimes sets it on our kitchen table when he wants to quiet more than furniture. Stay, he said, no theater, some mercy. But be a student. If Anya asks what the pour is, don't say fill it. Say give the metal a way to exist. Can you do that? I can try, I said my yes with rails. The second half began the way second halves should. Somebody handed me a tool I hadn't earned. Want to ram sand? Marco asked, crooking a finger. He showed me how to lower a hot mold shell into the pit, bury it to the shoulder in compacted sand like a decision you intend to keep, and tamp around the sprues the way you reassure a nervous friend. Leave the vents room to speak, he said. They will anyway. The kiln door opened with a yawn that wasn't fatigue. The shells inside glowed like coals that had decided to be architecture. We moved them, two at a time, carefully, as if gravity had opinions we respected. The crucible came out of the furnace with a brightness that made my mouth think about prayers it hadn't believed in since grade school. Heat your fear somewhere else, Anya said, and I swear the metal listened. Skim, Marco said, and the slag came off the surface like gossip you didn't intend to keep. Ready, Anya said, and the night arranged itself around the pour. We poured. The stream of bronze was a sentence that refused adverbs. It filled the sprues like a confession that had decided to be useful. The molds drank it loud and then quiet. We topped off and moved to the next and the next and the next. No one cheered. We behaved like we had known it would work, even if no one had known this would. Quick exercise, Anya called when the last sprue flashed and settled. She has the tone of a person who has taught toddlers and technicians and respects both. On your tag or your phone, write one sentence for tomorrow. Not about bronze, about you. It has to describe you without nomming you. She didn't collect them. We were adults. Our homework lived where we did. Owen wrote in small, neat caps, "Don't tighten me so much. I open by myself." Marco wrote, "I prepare the air." I wrote, "I am learning to give the metal a way to exist without proving I know the way." The teenager wrote, "I don't have to overheat my proof." The slurry mixer wrote carefully, "I can't stop when the line is breathing." Anya tapped each sentence with a gloved fingernail like a small bell. We waited the way decent people wait. The bronze forgot it had been a liquid and agreed to be a person. We shook out the molds while the sand remembered how to be sand and coughed away its obligations. The castings came out like moons that had not expected to be handled. "Don't judge," Anya said. "You wouldn't like it either if you just learned to exist." We cut the gates with a saw that took its time and left evidence on the floor like confetti that had a job. Across the yard, Owen handed a kid a file and let him find the seam without turning it into a metaphor. The kid learned anyway. It made me jealous and it made me stay. Outside the foundry fence, the alley made peace with itself. "You lied," Owen said, without sharpening the word. "Poorly," I said. "I could have said I was scared, that your knight might have a life that doesn't need me. Tell me about Marco without poetry." "He proposes and then steps out," Owen said. "He doesn't collect debts." "Stepping out," I repeated, and the phrase tasted like cinnamon. He took my hand inside his jacket pocket, which is how he keeps me warm when I'm pretending I'm fine. At home, we put three things on the table: our tag sentences and a scrap where Anya had drawn a crucible and written "Heat the metal, not your fear" in a hand that trusted the margins. "Let's write a house service sheet," I said. 5 lines, a staff. We don't have to sing in tune. Owen found a pen even the dog respected. We wrote. "If the calendar blinks, we talk. We don't let the foundry decide our honesty. If a place outside makes us more alive, we show the other the door and say where the tea is and where the crucible is not. Jealous means look closer, not hunt a fault. If one of us climbs onto his mezzanine, the other puts a tool in his hand, a sprue cutter, a phrase, a brush, and a time to breathe. Once a week we hang something that breathes, image, label, sentence, without explaining it until we read it out loud together." In the weeks after, I learned the difference between heat that proposes and heat that punishes. I learned not to chase a pour as if it owed me drama. I learned that chasing a seam with a file is more like listening than like victory. Marco showed me how to ram sand with my legs and not my hope. Anya taught me that investment is mercy you apply with your hands. Owen lent me his useful silence, the kind that keeps my hands from apologizing when what they need to do is adjust. I don't pretend bronze can fix what sentences break. We weren't broken, just poorly tempered. Edges too sharp, proofs too long, compassion pointed at the wrong surface. The crucible taught me to wait. The mold taught me to leave room for what arrives. The pour taught me that sometimes the right verb is give. Justify, a word from the museum, went back to being page direction. Give the line room so it holds. Last night Owen slid our tags under the magnet strip above the sink. Across from them I taped a photo Marco had taken of a casting on the bench, gate fresh cut, file marks honest as weather. The dog, the hyphen between us, walked through the kitchen like a professional separator of lines. We left the window open. June leaned in with a yes. "Silence while the metal remembers," Owen said, shamelessly stealing from Anya. "Standing by," I answered. Summary minus the sermon. Don't confuse heat with proof. Air is already help. Jealousy behaves when you give it a job. Stepping out isn't abandonment. Giving the metal a way to exist isn't domination. And the same casting, offered by different hands, doesn't tell one story but stories that hold each other up. Tonight the calendar box is actually white. That means tacos, nothing compulsory, try again tomorrow. Owen rinses a brush. I fold the towel. The dog checks the table legs like a repair person who knows when things are fine. Between the scrap and the photo I stick a small label. Here we give the metal a way to exist without proving it. Owen adds another. Here we say thank you. The kitchen breathes like a small foundry practicing being home. I don't chase the ending. I let it cool, then hold. That's enough.